are listening to the most comprehensive paranormal archive on the internet.
Welcome to Salsido Paranormal. I'm your host, James Salsido, and tonight we'll be covering alien abduction experiences, including my own. As always, you can find everything on the website, and that website is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com, and everything you can find there includes all the episodes of the show, links to social media, ways to listen and to support the show, and friends of the show, including Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel, and is the co-host of this show on Saturdays whenever she can make it. And we'll be talking to her in a moment here, in a little bit. So tonight we're doing something a little bit different in that I'm thinking at least half, maybe more of the show will be discussion about my experiences, and I'll start with one that I've shared before, but then I'll be sharing another one after that I only talked about once over on Troubled Minds Radio, and only briefly. I didn't really go into a lot of detail on it, and I'll talk about why. I didn't share that for a long time, well, for a few years anyway, I believe, and didn't go into that for a while. And we are, like I said, talking about alien abduction experiences. So yeah, I guess we'll start with Jen. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. There's a little bit of rain off and on where I'm at, but hopefully it won't be too loud or distracting in any way. But and I think it's very important to share experiences, personal experience in particular, because it gives people information that might be helpful to them in their situations. If they've had similar memories or experiences and things like that, it is helpful for people to hear that other people have, similar experiences or any experiences. It sort of gives a sense of, not feeling so separated and singled out. So in that way, I think it is helpful. And I'm looking forward to hearing, and glad to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I was telling Jen before we started that I'm grateful that she's here, because this is the only episode I've ever had where I want to do it, but I didn't want to do it, but I want to do it. So I'm kind of conflicted on it, I guess you could say. But so yeah, I guess I should start with the experience that I have talked about before on many shows, and it's one I had years before the second experience. And it's the one that has had, I think, longer or more long-term effects on me. So in a way, it's ironic that it's the one that I have shared and not the one I've kept to myself. But again, I think part of the reasoning for that will become clear once we get to the second one here. But yeah, so about 13 or 14 years ago, I'm terrible with time. I apologize to everyone that is really into having specific dates and times and all that. I'm not good with that. But I fell asleep one early morning. It was dark out. And I woke up to being on a different surface than I had fallen asleep on. At the time, I was sleeping on a couch in my living room here. It was a very comfortable couch, so I was using it as my bed. But I woke up to being on this flat, hard surface, and didn't recognize the room I was in. And it was blue walls, like a dark blue wall, with these white cabinets built into the walls. And they appeared to have electronics in them, not so much monitors or screens, but just like computers, the actual systems themselves in the walls of some kind or other. I don't even know what they were. And there were these three gray blurs moving around me. And I couldn't make out any features, any arms or legs or facial features or anything, even though they were pretty close, which I thought was odd. I also couldn't move anything except for my head a little bit. and I was trying to move and I couldn't move, and all I could see above me was light. It was either one very bright ceiling light or set of lights, or it was all one light. I don't know. And uh, it was I could see something up there starting to come down, and I heard my parents' voices off to one side uh, say something like, "Everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay." But they didn't have any emotion in them. And I looked off to the side, what little I could, and I saw two more of these blurs standing there. And so I knew it wasn't my parents. And so I kept on trying to move. These other gray blurs are moving around this table bed I was on. This thing was coming down from the ceiling, and I saw eventually that it was a robotic arm extension kind of a thing, and it had a needle at the end of it, and it was heading for my head. And so I was trying harder and harder to move, could not move, getting more freaked out. And eventually, this needle came down and it touched my left eye. And that's when I completely freaked out, and then everything went black. I blacked out, and then woke up here at home. And I didn't think about it right away when things started happening with my eyes. It took actually talking with friends years later, some friends of the show and everything, that we were talking about just experiences in life in general, and I happened to share that experience and then also be telling them about sort of the condition of my eyes and what was going on with them, but they were in different parts of the conversation, and I forget now because it's been a few years or more who it was, but they asked, well, wait, did your problem with your eyes, the new ones, I was born legally blind, but the new problems start happening after? Basically, they asked, when did all this start? And I realized that all the issues I've had in recent years started after that experience. And for anyone who doesn't know me, those issues have been eye strain and light sensitivity, and they've been slowly getting worse over time. I used to be able to read books in print with special glasses with no problem. I used to read all kinds of books all the time, constantly, and I can't do that anymore. Not books in print. So that was the first experience I had, and I didn't put two and two together until just recently, thinking about the second experience. But there were a couple of sort of similarities in the experiences, and so yeah, that's how all this kind of started. And I've been now, at the time I had that first experience, I hadn't been looking into any of these things at all, anything anomalous. I was aware of ghost experiences. I'd kind of had some experiences that seemed like they had to do with ghosts or spirits or souls for over the many years, but hadn't really looked into much of the, if any, of the alien or UFO stuff at that point. And it was just something I was aware of, but not super interested in at the time. That didn't come until years later, sort of listening to all kinds of shows and podcasts, and then eventually starting this, Salsido Paranormal. And so yeah, that's how all that first experience went. I know we've talked about this one before, but if you have any comments on that, Jen, you're welcome to share them.
Yeah, I was wondering about, deep into your infancy, like earliest that it can go. I'm just kind of curious about, the surrounding environment at the time. It reminds me of that in a way. It reminds me of like a very original memory of something, like from, like a latent memory perhaps you recalled in some way also. So I wondered about that. And then, I don't know, because, perhaps I wondered that anyway.
Yeah, not that I've ever heard of. I've never heard of. I know it took a little while for doctors to figure out that I was legally blind. Like they didn't realize it right when I was born, I guess. I don't know all the details on that. But that's about all I know as far as there was nothing that was really done to my eyes as a child. Nothing that could be done, because in my case, the issue is in the optic nerve. It's the condition is called optic nerve hypoplasia, and that's a basically underdeveloped or damaged optic nerve bundle that caused me to be born legally blind. So they couldn't do any kind of standard things. Also, this was back in '82, so I'm sure there's more and more stuff now they can do than they could back then, 44 years ago. But yeah, so not that I know of, but that is a good question.
Yeah, because I mean, if they weren't sure that you were legally blind for sure, but that you were born that way, there was some kind of an effect, that they just hadn't detected quite yet. So I think that's, I don't know, it makes me just really curious about everything about your entire beginning.
Right.
It sounds like the long arms and robotic movements, it could be perceived that way, you know. I don't know. So if you were if you were remembering something from some other time. Now, regardless, it could still, if we're going to say that it's an abduction experience of some kind, then I mean, I would wonder what the point was, from the robotic arm. You know what I mean? If already there was damage, optic nerve,
Right.
you know, just considering
Yeah.
like, would they have been attempting to remedy it, or it's interesting that the parents were present and a part of this, as a memory of it and reacting to what was happening, meaning that they were aware semi of this, at least in your dream state, you thought so, or your mind, or wherever the escape was. And
Right.
then who were the individuals that were just the blurs, like if in your very earliest times, that there was a lot of family around, or was there a lot of isolation, or were these memories of medical practitioners like doctors or nurses, there's all kinds of
Right.
things that come to mind and make me think, just all kinds of things.
Right. Yeah. Now the blurs that I heard in my parents' voices, or the voices that I heard of my parents, they came from two more of these blurs as well. So there were really like five of these things around me. Um, and my parents' voices had no emotion in that experience.
Did you
So it
think in
kind
a
of,
way that maybe these like these blurs were simply using the voice?
yes, yeah, like they were trying to keep me calm or keep me from panicking too much, but they kind of failed because they had no emotion in their voices, and they didn't look anything like my parents because they were just two more of these blurs. So, and I have heard of that in some cases where uh, supposedly, according to reports, people they it feels like when they encounter other beings, the other beings will try to do things to keep the people calm, or just to experiment with them in general, see how they'll react to different things, and not quite get everything right. I think that's even a thing in folklore too, even without aliens. This idea of people appearing or other entities appearing as people that you know, but they're not quite right, um, either living or deceased. So um, there's all that as well. So,
Starting to
but
really come down here.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's starting to rain a lot, but I'm
Well,
still
don't
here
get
with
so yeah, don't get soaked.
you. No. Um. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I'll move on to the other experience. And so this one I had, I feel like it was a few years ago. Uh, I really repressed it because of the stigma attached to the what I felt like the experience could have been. I guess I just need to go into it first, and then I can talk about the other stuff after. Um, but again, I fell asleep one early morning. I usually don't go to bed till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, uh, and so it was dark, and I woke up because I felt pain. Now I do have like a bruised tailbone uh, that I get pain in sometimes if I lay on my back for too long, or if I sit in a chair for too long, or the wrong kind of chair. So I have that pain, but this was pain on another level, and it was throughout my my behind my rear end and that whole middle part of my body, just from the inside out. And I was standing in a room, doubled over from the pain. And I could see everything was very colorful, like the walls. I don't remember now what color they were, but they were bright colors. It seemed almost like a lobby, like a waiting room, except there were no chairs in it. There was a counter or a desk with someone behind it, but again, I don't know if it was literally a gray blur or some kind of blur, or if it was just I was too far away to see much about them. But and then there were two other figures off in the distance that I couldn't see very well. But I got this feeling from everyone that was there that they were not people. And they were just watching to see what was, basically just watching me to see how I was doing, what I was doing. And I saw a door that appeared to lead outside. And so I went for that. I just didn't want to be there. And I got outside and I looked around and I didn't recognize anything. And there wasn't any vegetation anywhere, any trees, anything, and hardly anything for as far as I could see in all directions, except for this building that I'd come from, which was like a dome-shaped building, which is weird. And I feel like I saw a couple other of these dome-shaped buildings nearby. And I didn't know where I was, so I went back into the room thinking, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to need help to get home, so I guess I'll have to talk with these people, whatever they are, whoever they are. And I got back in there, and there was one of my family members, and I don't really want to say who this time, because, again, it was that situation where I recognized him, but it didn't feel like it was him, and he was just watching me too, and smiling like everything was okay, but it didn't feel okay. I still felt the pain. And eventually, the pain was still there, but eventually I blacked out from the pain. Everything faded to black, and then eventually I woke up and I was fine. But as soon as I woke up, the first thing I thought of was I felt like I was remembering the aftermath of one of those things that is joked about so much now, or at least has been over the years here, the idea of aliens putting a probe, or probing, or doing some kind of procedure involving people and their behind, their butt. And it freaked me out so much because I don't remember the process, luckily, in a way. I just found myself in this room and was feeling the pain, I guess, from after. But as soon as I woke up, I had that feeling, and I had heard of all the stigma and the way I know that whole experience has been turned into sort of a joke in over the years here, at least in the U.S. I don't know about anywhere else, to the point where people use it, not even thinking much about it. So I don't blame everyone that uses it for using it when they're talking about experiences and these things and trying to keep things light, maybe not realizing that for some people it's not funny. It's not fun to think or talk about, or to talk about in that kind of a tone, I guess. And so, yeah, so the people in this place, again, I didn't feel like they were people. Same as with the first experience. And the place didn't feel right. I didn't recognize where I was at. And so that's basically, I'm just thinking, I do remember also, I felt like I was wearing a hospital gown. Like it didn't feel like I was wearing my clothes. And like I said, the pain was just, at the time, was really intense. And so, and I wanted to get out of there, but I didn't know how or where to go. And then after I woke up, I just decided this is so out there that I don't know if I'm ever going to tell anyone. And I didn't for a few years. And it's sort of part of what brought this on, talking about this, is all the current things that I've been seeing over the last few years here with all the disclosure stuff and the focus on aliens and UFOs. And UAP, all those things, but not so much focus on people's experiences with what they felt were abductions and some of these very invasive experiences that they've had that I've heard about for years, um, and had one that, like I said, I've shared before, but for some reason that one, the one that focused on my eyes, I was okay with sharing. I don't know if it's because it happened so much longer ago, uh, or if it's just because it was focused on my eyes, which were already not great to begin with. But anyway, so, and I don't expect anyone to believe or accept what I've just shared, uh, or and so that's fine. I just always hope that we can all agree to disagree without sort of um, confronting anyone about any of these experiences or being dismissive or anything like that, disrespectful about these experiences, because that is another kind of a pain to deal with. So anyway, I'm happy to take whatever questions you have, Jen, on that.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, one thing, the remembering of it and the way that you're seeing it and everything, it's, what window of time was this? Like, what era?
This one was only like 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. Did it feel like a memory, or did it feel like it had just like it was
No,
in
it
your?
felt like it was happening. Like it felt like I was actually, same with the first one, I felt like I was actually experiencing it.
No, I think. So what I'm thinking is, when you were in the state, in the memory of the experience, so was it like you woke up and you were like, "Oh, I had this dream," or was it like a vision? I mean, they're kind of the same thing, but
It was more like I had actually been somewhere else and lived through the, sorry to cut you off there, to live through the thing.
yeah, of course,
Uh,
yes. But I mean, had you
yeah.
gone to sleep and then that's what you saw?
Yeah, I went to sleep, woke up to being in the place and having the experience, and then somehow blacked out again after when it was done.
And then when you were in the dream, it was present time. You felt like
Yes.
in present time. Like, could you see yourself?
No.
So it's just looking out at the
Yes.
environment. Okay.
Yeah. And interacting
And
with it,
it's true
I
that people
guess.
do discount these.
Yeah.
I mean, these sorts of things. If it is what it sounds like, from some other, the question would be of like, what for?
Right.
Beyond like our realm. If it's not something like that, if it's more like something to do with I don't know. Have you heard about that? There's well, I hate to say this, but like chakras. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Yes.
they're energy centers in the body.
Yeah.
Well, the root chakra, it's right at the base of the spine, and the
Right.
energy is coming out from, it looks like a tornado almost, is what I've heard about these different centers that go up the entire body all the way up to the head, and that so if you had, hypothetically, if you could see into that realm, you would see people walking around and basically a tornado, 7 different tornadoes in the front, small tornadoes spread over the front of their body, and like another 7 on the back in the opposite direction. These are spinning, so they say. And disruptions in that field can be felt as a physical, a physical reaction to it. Like the person, for example, if there's some kind of disarrangement in the vocal region, which is like at the neck,
Right.
it could affect how much a person's able to communicate what they're trying to say, or how they're trying to communicate their ideas, and or if it's at the heart, it can affect, how they either give out love from the front is usually the idea, and then from the back, they're taking, able to receive love and feel loved. And then if you go down, all the different chakras have meaning to them. And they say that sacral chakra, the root chakra, is what grounds you to, it's like a grounding mechanism to the core of the plane. If there's any truth to the energetic field, that would insinuate that there's some kind of interest in what's connecting that spiritual body. I guess I hate to use the term spiritual too. I think it's just because that makes you think that it's somewhere, but the what would you call biofield body.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
biofield body is kept to the core of existence, in this reality. So you're containing all the different layers of biofield bodies within a physical material thing. And I don't want to get too weird with this or scientific or whatever. It's not scientific, it's metaphysics, but which is, considered a very fringe topic. But if there was some curiosity or interest in that and it were to create some sort of chaos in the root of the biofield body, it would have a physical effect as well. So it could be a premature kind of movement from one layer of the biofield existence to another. Or
Okay.
but I've heard about in a lot of, it's interesting, but a lot of cults and in criminology and things like that, the belief system at an occult level in that region as well, that it has a lot to do with the polarity of the ecosystem, like the macrocosm, the macro microcosm idea. So, like, if the body is a representation of the universe, it also has a polarity, at opposite directions of the biofield body. There's a sort of magnetic field, and there's a polarity to that body, meaning a north and south pole, so to speak. And that those can, if they become disrupted or imbalanced, it affects the organism, of course, in a different way. So, if these beings were, I don't know, just trying to figure out what the mechanism is of that field, or if they're trying to reverse the polarity, or they're trying to accomplish this, or maybe doing some studies on it. I have no idea. But it sounds like like the interest in the way that people describe these experiences, that there's something to do with affecting the polarity of the biofield.
Yeah, I mean, it could be very well be that, because I mean, so often you hear about people have no idea why that's happening, and I mean, I definitely didn't, so that could be. And I mean, as I'm sure you heard too, we have to be careful not to ascribe any sort of human. If they're not human, we have to be careful about applying human thoughts, like thinking or emotions or motives to what they're doing too,
Yeah,
which I
that's what
think
I
is
mean.
always,
That's
yeah,
really difficult because, I mean,
right,
we might, yes. I mean, if you ever see people dissect a frog or an insect, like in science class, they're not thinking of the specimen the same way. You know what I mean? As
right,
the frog is thinking of itself. If it doesn't think of itself necessarily from what I hear. But yeah, there's no reason to believe that a very intelligent species, or, if that be the case, they're also emotionally intelligent. That's not necessary, at all. So they may have just as not even a hint of concern about the specimen. If they're just curious about what this or that does, they would lack that humanity. But we would have an issue because it's instilled so deeply within our psyche to personify and humanize everything. And so then trying to understand what the motive would be, well, it's not applicable. And if it was, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You see what I'm saying?
right.
So it must be something quite a bit different and have to do with something about the polarity, maybe, is one thing I've heard repeated over and over again. It's seen a lot of in symbology, and it's occult symbology. Like they say that what I'm talking about with these polarities, it's represented in the candy cane from Christmas. Have
Oh
you ever
wow,
heard of that? Yeah,
no,
that it's representation of that. And so is the Christmas tree, that it's got to do with like the North Pole Star and the field of how it comes down in a cone shape, or how it appears to have a tunneling effect. And then
right,
there was a who was the artist? He was from Latvia, I think, and he was down in Florida, and the crystal, I think, what was it called? I wanted to say Crystal Cave, but that's not what it was. Coral Castle.
oh, yes, yeah,
So Coral Castle, the man who built Coral Castle said that he understood the mechanism behind the way the pyramids were built, and it had to do with reversing polarities of the materials themselves and would allow them to levitate and be moved into place. He was reversing the polarity of the actual mineral. So that's the secret. It's that. But the idea of that is extended a lot into, like I say, a lot of occult symbology. with magnetism, and he spoke in code in some of his books, according to, like what he was rumored to have said, even that many of his books, it sounds like he's talking about something else. But he's actually talking
Right.
about the polarities of, the universe and the earth itself and these different materials, and how the reversal of it can cause, levitation of the object or being able to lighten its density, things like that. Really kind of fringe ideas, but highly present. The idea of the serpent around the staff is to do with polarities as well. And then that's also represented, obviously, in the medical field. And people are thinking, it has to do with the double helix of DNA or the spinal system, the spinal column. The idea of the spine and the energy moving up and down the spine. Of course, you have all of the different accounts of people talking about the significance of that. And that comes out of a lot of, a lot of people attribute it to things like, Hinduism and stuff like that, or even in Buddhism, where the Buddha sits underneath that sacred tree, and then a great cobra comes over and shields him from the rain. And it's a reference, though, to the energy moving up and down the spinal column. Energy, meaning like the vitality and the intelligence of the creature being able to receive, from, and then there were a lot of stories out there that the sacral, it's called the sacral root chakra in a lot of ways, but just a lot of people refer to it just as like a sacral energy because it's the root of the being. But like essentially that, I don't know, it just pops up in every single culture, and some people say that disturbing it can cause a type of, not mania, but like a disturbance in the individual. And then other people say that, like, so you shouldn't disturb it. It's like a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. And so there's a lot of, in occult belief systems, to intentionally, like, uncoil that serpent up the spine because some type of, that's supposed to, I guess, if you do it prematurely or something like that, it could cause some sort of disarrangement. All of this is looping back into, though, a sort of manipulation of the energy field or the polarity involved. And so, yeah, that's a completely separate idea and purpose, and which in occult practices too, many people mistake it as that it's something like you would think, but in fact, the motivation is much more complicated.
Yeah, I'm just wondering too, I mean, how far back, because we've talked before about the idea that maybe whatever we think of as aliens now might have just been other beings that have always been around, and somehow there's connections between them and or maybe they are some kind of fae or just fairy or some other being like that, and the similarities between like contact with people and the way they act and the way they react and those encounters. And I'm just wondering now. I mean, I know I've heard about people vanishing and reappearing, and I'm just really, that's one of the other things I wonder is, I mean, those couple of times, those couple of experiences, was I still here somehow? Or was I not here? Like, did I literally go somewhere else, get
Yeah,
transferred somewhere else or not? And I have no
I thought
idea.
that too. I thought
Yeah.
that exact same thing. Like so many times where it felt like I almost forgot that I was, here. Now people talk about a type of amnesia, like obviously, like when you're in a dream state, there's a sort of amnesia that prevents you from recognizing that you're dreaming. Lucid
Hmm.
dreaming goes beyond that, and it removes that amnesia. It makes the person sleeping a sort of driver in their dream. They become aware that they're dreaming. They don't leave the dream. They stay in it, but aware that they are in a dream state. And from there, in trance work and in like just natural vision state, which is some people just have a natural vision state. They're able to envision and imagine very profoundly. But the idea being that, that's not a separate reality per se, but it's the unseen realm. So when you're talking about these beings that exist in any of these realms of reality, probably more so in that one, they're existing at some level. If we break down the mechanism of what the mind is and how it's operating, and we can say that just imagining something or seeing something in your mind, that's just in your head and fluff it off. But absolutely everything that comes into existence starts there. And even where the
Right.
ideas come from to have them, that's really important to say. Because even the idea to speak or say a thing or to do anything in your life, it comes from that same realm. And we are interpreting our reality through that lens as well. I mean, the effect of color and sensation all coming through the senses. This world is not what it seems to be at all. It's just what we are seeing because our mind's eye is allowing us to see it that way. So if these beings exist in that sort of realm, in what world this is that we're living in, just because we cannot see them all the time doesn't mean that they wouldn't exist. It would mean that we are only privy to what our physical bodies available to perceive through the senses. And even then, sometimes won't see everything that is there, because if it did, it would go mad. The mind has to filter out a great deal of information and only give you a certain amount every single day. And that is true.
Right.
So there's a lot more to be perceived or sensed. And if it's too much, the mind will only take what's absolutely necessary and leave out the rest. So there's a very big possibility that, things like this these creatures or beings or other intelligences are moving around us in our plane, in our world, and invisible to some extent. And what their motivations would be, since they don't fit into the spectrum and they do not reveal in this material world, doesn't mean that they wouldn't have their own intelligence of a type and have motivations of their own that are beyond our understanding. And though we may be visible to them, they may not always be visible to us. You'd have to imagine that in their realm they can see you perfectly, but you can't.
Yep.
See what I mean? But in that certain state of mind, you do see them. And sometimes when they're like, oh, you see me, or, oh, maybe they are aware that you were in a different space because you're in the dream state. Because most of the time, these experiences happen in that window right there.
Right. And see, that's what I don't know if it did, because that would be sort of the most logical, or if it didn't, because that's what it felt like. Like I said, it didn't feel like a memory. It didn't feel like I was still dreaming. It felt like both times it felt like I was physically somewhere else. And there were these other presences around me, and the things that happened, that they were doing them. And especially because the first one, there wasn't any pain. The one with the eye, when the needle touched my eye, it didn't hurt. It just freaked me out because there's a needle touching my eye. It could hurt. That's the point of that. But it didn't at the time. The pain didn't come until after. If that was caused by that, I don't know that for sure. But the second experience, I woke up with pain in a different place that I didn't recognize. And I was on my feet, sort of, like I said, hunched over because of the pain. And so I would hope that it was just sort of somehow in my own mind, but also it did not feel like it. And that's one of the parts that is the most disturbing to me, in a way, is that it felt like I was somewhere else and then placed back here.
Have you heard of the whole, it has to do with clones. Have you heard a lot or thought about clones at all? Have you ever heard about that? Like, I'm sure you've heard of it, but have you heard people talking about it as if it was a real thing? And that the creating of vessels, basically. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, a little bit. Yes.
Okay, so to be honest, I mean, I've thought a lot about it. So, because I have these very powerful, vivid dreams, and I was doing a lot of. Actually, I wasn't. I kind of just I was doing a lot of, as I usually do, just sort of perusing, the internet archives and this and that, and just kind of whatever direction I was swayed into listening, I would, or reading or whatever I would. I came across these concepts though about cloning, and that they did master, or that somebody, I don't know what group, but there are certain groups even that are known to have mastered this, like the Raelians, which is a type of religious system almost. I mean, I don't know if I should call it that, but it's a belief system. And then there's these, I don't know, that there's capability of creating clones, and that even at some other level or realm, that these beings have the ability to create clones. And then the idea of placing the psyche of the individual, like especially in a dream state, I guess every time in a dream state, the person is sort of, and they have this clone and they take the like psychic body of the sleeper and they put it into the clone, and the clone experiences certain things in that realm, and it's in another world somewhere, and they're animating the clone because it is a perfect biological match to their own body. Like they take everybody's blood at birth and they put it in a huge, and that's true, and they put it in this huge blood bank system. Like I wouldn't call it a blood bank, I guess, but a DNA system, and or like just they take the profiles and everything. So they have like access to a massive amount of DNA. And just that somehow they place the psyche, because it's a perfect match of the individual, into the clone. And then great escapades occur using the clone and in that world with these other people or other people who are in clones or whatever the case. And there's a whole thing going on. And I know it sounds really bizarre. And there was an individual who talked a lot about it. His name was Donald Marshall. And he had a lot of strange theories. But he's not the only one. There were a lot of people who account this of going into a dream state, going into the world, or like seeing a replica of themselves, and the clone belief system, the clone theory cannot be dismissed because the individual would come back. Or, like if you were to, for example, affect the psyche of the person in the clone in the dream state world, wherever world that they're traveling, like astral travel, essentially, that it would affect, if you were to come into the bedroom with a person who is sleeping and just put them out, for example, the clone would instantly drop if the animation is purely coming from the mind of the sleeper. So there's this whole weird concept about that, which is really fascinating. And the idea that they can create vessels and then cloning and so on and so forth. It's really fascinating. But I don't know, it made me think of that because of experiencing things in the dream world and then coming back, and it's like it very much really did happen, and feeling sort of, tired from it or like in pain from it or whatever, that I don't know. Some people report things like that. I've heard it. And I've
That's
wondered about some
why.
of my own experiences too that are really bizarre that I wondered about.
And that's why, and we can, if you ever want to, we can get into those, but only if you feel comfortable getting into those. But that's why I'm leaning towards, like, I feel like I know what it was, which is the whole whatever it was, the alien abduction experience. But I also don't know for sure, other than it just felt very real. It seemed real to me anyway. That's all I can really say to that. But yeah, I've heard a bit about clones and all that, but not to that degree. So, but that's why I always enjoy having you here because you've been able to do a lot more research than I have, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just stuff, you hear, and then it makes you kind of think of it. Like, I wonder if the way that it presented as almost like a hospital environment, that's really fascinating. I wonder if we're putting certain types of symbology because it felt like a medical environment, or it felt like an environment where your bodily space is like up to the decisions of another set of people. And we typically encounter that like in a hospital, where you
Right.
turn over the rights of like, I don't know, just fix me. That kind of idea, like you're going to
Yeah.
the doctors. And so I wonder if the symbology in that state of mind, if it somehow colors the environment that you're actually seeing. You may have been in an entirely different environment, hypothetically, but your mind cast upon the screen that sort of symbology because it did feel to you like your sovereignty over, you're no longer making decisions for yourself, kind of about your bodily well-being. Like you're like in that kind of state of mind in a way. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
how
and I mean, yeah, sorry. Yep.
I
Um,
just wonder
that,
about the symbology of it being a hospital.
and it was odd because that room I was in for the second experience, and again, just to repeat, I basically fell asleep one early morning, woke up with intense pain in my groin area, both like literally going from the outside inside out of my rear end. I mean, I never had that level of pain in that part of my body before. Um, And I was in this large room. It looked like it should have been like a waiting room for some kind of medical building, but there were no chairs anywhere. There was nowhere for anyone to wait. But there was a desk, like some kind of counter or a desk, and there was someone behind it, but I couldn't see them clearly at all. And there was two other figures off in the distance. I feel like I saw someone walk by off in the distance too, but no one didn't feel like anyone there was really human, and they were all just watching me. And I left the building, so to speak. I don't know where I was at. Went through a door, got outside. This guy, and that's another thing, detail I just remember now too. The sky didn't even look like it was the right color. Like it literally seemed like some kind of a different world. It was not blue. It wasn't like I can't even describe what color it was. It just didn't seem right. And so I walked back in the building, and there was all those people still there, people quote unquote, and there was this relative of mine that was there, and almost like they had sent someone there to comfort me, one of their own again. Had this relative's appearance and everything, and yet I could just feel that it wasn't them. And eventually I blacked out from the pain and came to back at home. And so, yeah, I don't know what the experience was. I just know what it seemed like to me. And I know about the ridicule. And the ridicule is the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight because I've been thinking about this the last couple of years, about this experience and how I can imagine people that I know or that know me hearing this, and even if they still like me or whatever, or want to be friends or what, doesn't matter, still thinking that's too much, that's too far, that's impossible. And you hear about that reaction from people and even their loved ones. I mean, I have never told my family about even the experience with my eye, with the needle to my eye. I've never told anyone in my family. I don't even know if they've heard it. I know they listen to the podcast here and there, but I've never even told them about it because, again, they've had some experiences with ghosts and things like that. I've never heard anyone talk about any kind of alien and or UFO experiences. And I mean, at some point, I will tell them. I'm probably going to end up telling them at this series of meetings I'm going to do at the library, because I have a couple of people in the family that want to go. But I have not yet told them about any of this because, again, a lot of people, the idea of ghosts is somewhat common, but once you get into these other areas of either cryptids or creatures or actual encounters with other beings, it's too much. It's too far. And that's where that ridicule comes from. And then I do think the government and everything has helped keep that going and speed that up with fiction and things like that, popular culture. And it's been very frustrating over the last few years here to hear that kind of ridicule and dismissal and that kind of a joke again. You hear that joke about, I hope I never have an encounter with aliens because I don't want to have them do any kind of probing on my behind. And it's supposed to be sort of a joke, but also now it's I mean, never was really funny to me before, but then after having this experience, it's really hard to kind of sit back and not say a lot whenever that comes up anywhere in any setting.
No, and understandably so. I mean, the world we're living in and the way that people do want to talk about these things, they're underestimating, the system in itself anyway. Like I mentioned, that you have the polarity involvement, the reversal of polarity. I mentioned that earlier on. I know it's kind of a metaphysical angle, but there's a lot to be said about that. And like I say, in occult practices and everything, they have a lot of emphasis on, the idea of awakening, a certain amount of, I guess, I don't know what you would even call it, but somehow, just that it goes up the entire spine. And I'm not going to say like specifically that's what it would have to do with the human biofield necessarily. I'm not saying that. But if you're thinking of, in this instance, you were in another parallel world. And if these beings occupy that space, then they would be of a parallel type of existence. They'd be another type of material altogether. And the way that they would interact with us, and, we may think of things, of course, there's sort of a lot of taboo and there's this and that about what this might mean or any of that, but it's replicated in the occult symbols and systems. And it has to do nothing with what people right now would put emphasis on about the significance of the, polarity of the body or the biofield or anything like that. And there might be some kind of correlation, like I mentioned, about the Christmas tree and things like that. But I think essentially with these beings, and if there was some type of interaction at that level in a dream state or out of body state, that it would be recorded. I think the most significant thing that stands out too is the amnesia. You notice that like it just picks up on the after effect, but obviously something occurred, and then that memory is completely blanked out. Like that memory of whatever it was, it seems like it probably is there, and you could kind of knock on the door and find out what it was, but some part of yourself is kind of not allowing that to happen. There's no way it wasn't recorded at some level, and so it could be accessed technically, and that would be, that's one thing to say concerning this, because that's what everybody accounts. They don't recall, they recall the after. They weren't allowed to see what happened prior to that event or that experience, and so that insinuates, though, that something had occurred before that event that caused this sort of, scenario of discomfort. And that's where a lot of things about hypnotism come in, about like for good or for bad, because you have false memory syndrome, a lot of studies about that. A lot of those societies, though, were started up by people who were obviously not obviously, you can pretty much cite them name and by their papers and everything. They were also interested in the occult. So there's something about the false memory syndrome and all of that in the hypnotic world, and the gatekeeping involved too at certain levels, about that. But
and then
you should be able to access the memories yourself, and there's a lot of techniques for that. And if a person does, a lot of people do try to go back as far as they can to see exactly what occurred. And then, I don't know, I think that we just put everything in such black and white, that this was in the real world, but, and why would it happen in another world? And everything of reality is in this world. And that's the belief system. And anything else is just something that you've imagined or dreamed, not seeing that it's the same exact, it's all in the same world. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to speak if you didn't start in that one. I mean, that's where everything begins there. If you diminish that one, this one here ceases to exist. So it all starts in the light switch, basically, of consciousness inside. So, and that world is invisible, and it's expressed in this one, Yeah,
and I think when we do that episode on hypnosis, I think we can kind of combine that and also the whole alien abduction experience as well, because so many of the famous cases, after the people had their experience, they either wanted to or they were directed to going through some kind of hypnosis to get the memories of their experiences, and then of course that for a lot of people that process either means that whatever they got, some people think it's can't be accurate, or there's some people that think it's totally accurate, and who knows. As usual, I think, like you were just saying there, I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle, but that's kind of why I'm not sure what I'd want to do, if I want to do anything to try to get that memory of whatever happened first, because obviously, like you said, something happened for me to be in so much pain, to wake up, like, on the floor in this place, doubled over, not laying down on any surface even that time. It's not like it was sort of just a transfer from one flat surface to another, like with the couch to that table in the first experience. I was laying down and then I was on my feet. So it really was, it was not fun. And then, like I said, thinking about all the ridicule that could come after, and especially from not even necessarily ridicule, but the the way that when you come out with something like that, it can change the way people interact with you, or look at you, or want to interact with you. And I didn't want to do that because I'm kind of already so isolated at home as I am as it is so much. I didn't really want to lose any contact with anybody, but
You honestly
also,
though, you also don't want to be around someone like that.
right,
I mean, that is an
yeah,
immediate filter. Like if somebody's like, hey, like I only like you a certain way about what you're gonna say, that is an immediate check mark of like, okay, thank you for letting me know.
right,
So I didn't waste my time on that. Because putting up with some other person, because people are, I mean, I love human beings, but people are a certain way, and you find your own people, and some people
yes,
are not your people. And to be honest, there's millions and billions of people, and there access to a lot of different types of people, and you don't need to like. If someone's gonna just be like, "Oh, I only like you if you don't say things like that," or "I only like you because I didn't know that about you," that is definitely someone to be like, okay, well now you're filtering through to find your real people that you can kind of visit with or talk with if you want to or whatever the case, but at least you even have around you. Because I wouldn't even want somebody like that around me. Like someone
true,
who's like, you know, so yeah. And then as far as that too, like what the hell? I mean, like, is that seriously enough for some people to just be like, oh my gosh, to hear that you might have had some kind of bizarre experience wherein what people talk about quite often may have occurred, and that's ridiculous. And to be honest, as if they have nothing to relate it to. I mean, we all know
right,
the numbers about like what people have experiences concerning these types of experiences, and not only that, but these types of memories in the inner psyche world that they're working with. So, yeah. I mean, that's my take on that. As far as like I was afraid of losing
right,
people by talking about something that I experienced. Don't let that kind of thing affect you. That's what I definitely
yeah,
think on that.
yeah. And I think through talking this over and everything, I've gotten to that point too. I had an amazing thing happen today too before the stream. By the way, it's really pretty neat. So I was listening to a Twitch stream. A friend of a friend that does their own gaming stream and everything, and something came up, and I mentioned what I do and everything, and they said, "Oh, that's neat. That's interesting. I don't believe in that, but that's okay." And it was just amazing to hear someone be like, "Yeah, I don't think any of that's real, but that's okay."
Yeah,
And we're,
neutral.
you know,
Yeah. Just sort
it
of
was just,
taking in the information. I
yeah,
don't know why people have to make a snap judgment in some way. And then like you can't help it. But like I mean, at the same time, it's just kind of good to take in the information, and
and it
think
was
it over.
nice. Yeah, it was nice to not have a stereotypical reaction like you hear about in the news or on social media, where, like we were saying, oh, you don't agree with me? Well, then we can't, then I have to be mad at you. No, this
Yeah, that's
person wasn't mad at
crazy.
me, and I wasn't mad at them, and it was really nice. And to be honest, it was actually nice to just kind of hang out there and
Yeah.
not think about any of this for a little while, and just listen to them talking and talk with them a little bit and text and everything, but still. So I thought that was pretty amazing that I had that happen today, where someone just came out, but politely and kindly said, I don't, I don't really believe in any of that, but, you know, that's okay. You can, and I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad this actually happened. So,
And they
yeah,
believe in
yeah,
something. They believe in,
right,
if they're like, I don't believe in that. It's like, well, what do you believe in, and tell me about it.
right.
Yes,
Anyway, yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's a good place to stop. Like I said, I think we can get into, if you want to, when we do that hypnosis episode, we can definitely combine the alien abduction experience into that as well, because so many of the famous
Oh, yeah.
cases, people
I
did
had the
that after they had it.
craziest hypnosis experience, at one time. And so
Hmm.
like yeah. No, it was super weird though. Like
Right.
I told you a little bit about it and how bizarre it was. And yeah, I'll go into it
Yes.
just whenever time we talk about that and it just makes sense to talk about it, I will. It wasn't like a big deal. It was just kind of weird. And
Right.
clearly Like they were trying. She was trying to do some kind of weird hypnotic thing. I did tell her
Yeah.
twice to quit talking. I was like, "Stop." I'll tell you about it
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Well, thank you for being here with me for this one, especially, like I said, because I was kind of, I had all kinds of mixed emotions about it. I knew I wanted to do it. I just was,
Yeah. I
had
had a
some
great time.
feelings. But yeah, no, thank you
Well,
so much.
that makes sense. I mean, my
Yeah,
goodness. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm glad you did. And I think it does open up a lot of ideas, as far as like I don't know. It's a weird way to put it, but what is the polarity of the body? Like does it have any significance with that? I think there's a lot of studies about that. Not studies, that's the wrong way to put it. There's a lot of talk, about
mhm.
polarities and things. And so I think that is a fascinating angle. But
Yeah. We could
I had a
definitely
great
cover
time
that
visiting with
sometime.
you, and thank you so much. And I look forward to talking with you next time.
Yes, you as well. Thank you and take care. And so that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for listening in, however you're listening in. And I will talk to you all next time on Salsido Paranormal. Take care.